Coach Logue and how he's unique and not unique. There are probably lots of Coach Logues, legacy coaches, people who do certain things a certain way, old school, having to adapt across generations, and what? Like, he's exchanging his entire life at a sacrificial level for the fates of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids.
Hi, and welcome to And If Love Remains. I'm your host, Mike Levitt, and I have on the line today a good friend from high school, Brian Hudson. Brian is a broadcaster, but currently he's working in corporate video. He works for a large healthcare system there in Northern California. He still lives in Northern California, but he's also the host of Friday Night Lights for Bear River High School. And there's a lot of things I'd like to talk about. This is a little bit maybe of a passion project for me a bit, but it's also, I think there's some bigger things we could chat about. And I'm excited to have Brian on the line. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Oh, nice to hear your voice, Mike. And, high school was graduated 30 years ago. So when somebody says nice things about you go, I hope I really was nice back then, because you feel like such a different person 3 decades later. But I have such fond memories and, respect near and far for you and our interactions together back then. And great to hear from you today.
Oh, I appreciate that. It means a lot that when I do reach out, that you do respond. And I agree. All I remember is the best things with our interactions. We played on several teams together, and we, it was a real great camaraderie going on there at that time there at good old Bear River High School in Grass Valley, California.
Yeah, and it was such a small school. We were talking about with the kids, my kids the other, sometime back about graduating class size and all of that. And the school at the time was, I think our graduating classes, and you were a year younger than me, if I remember correctly. And I want to say graduating class was like 150.
Yeah, 160? I think ours was like 174.
Yeah, like yeah. So if you just, times 4, that's pretty small school.
Well, and if I remember right, you would have been the 4th graduating class, I believe. And because I think I was the 5th of that school. We were a brand new school.
This just came up too the other day, that I was telling somebody that my class, which would have been the class in 1991 at Bear River High School, was the first to go all 4 years.
That's right.
At that school, because I had an older brother who was 2 years older than me, and he had done 2 years at a neighboring Nevada Union, and then they transferred him down and all of that stuff. But freshman all the way through senior year, my class was the first one to go all through all 4 years there.
It was quite an experience. It was really cool to see a school grow up, and you remember this when we played basketball, specifically basketball, because, until I think, was it my senior year? It may have been junior, but I think my senior year was the first year that we were not playing basketball games at the Nevada Union gym.
That's right.
We actually had our own gym.
That's right. Yeah, they must have just shoestring built the school, because at the time, and we had all the sports,
right?
But there was, a swim team, but we had no pool. There was a basketball team, but all we had was a practice gym where you had 2 feet of sidelines. I mean, you couldn't even put a fold-out chair practically on the sideline
right.
there. And it was just that one little gym for all levels of basketball, boys and girls, played simultaneously. We were playing out on, remember, we'd practice out on the blacktop half the time in the rotations and all that. So, and you haven't been back, if I'm not mistaken, in a long time. Of course, they got a nice, beautiful gym now, and they got, a pool, and the football stadium's got lights, and they've got, extra,
by the way, that's
extra
the other
fields
thing.
And yeah.
Whenever I see your show, Friday Night Lights, it just makes me laugh, because I never played on a Friday night at home. I mean, that was not a thing. It was all Saturday day games for us.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So I just do the Friday night for a year. I did the little radio play-by-play with the local guy. And then they asked me, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago, something like that, to do the PA announcing. So I do the PA announcing Friday night football for them, and
fun.
stay in touch with the school dad. And that's part of my oxygen in my world, is staying connected, because it meant so much, in many different fronts to be at that school.
And that kind of brings it to one of the points that I wanted to bring up is this is kind of an interesting year, because this is the first year, and I don't know how long, you probably know better than me, that the football coach, Terry Logue, won't be on the sidelines, other than a small hiatus, I think, when he was coaching at Sierra College. But for decades, he was the man on the sidelines of Bear River High School, and he created such a culture and such an incredible environment. And we, as players, we were kind of on the beginning of that, and as as you've kind of grown and seen that evolve, I'm curious what your impressions and kind of your take on that.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, the school was obviously in its infancy when we were there. My first year at the school was 1987, and that was the first full year for this new varsity football coach named Terry Logue, who we had just heard about, he played and coached at Paradise High School, where they had the big fire right up in Northern California, the Camp Fire and all of that. And then coached for 3 years at Butte College, and did great at Paradise High School as a coach. And then went to try the junior college thing and kind of bombed and wasn't successful. And then he heard about this job in this little town of Grass Valley and said, I ought to go try to, get that job. So I had never, for example, on the sports front, I had played flag football at our middle school, right? We went to the same middle school, and flag football was the thing. And there were a couple of kids, I remember the Curtis Newberries and all that I'm like, whoa, you play tackle football?
Right.
Yeah.
Eric Belding, the Frazier brothers.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that. I liked playing 3-down, flag football, and, against whatever it was, not Pleasant Ridge, but the Mount St. Mary's,
Hennessy, or
Hennessy. Ready Springs, or
there we go,
all of that. Seven Hills.
Oh yeah.
What was it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to try. I think, what was the big rivalry? It started with a G.
Lyman Gilmore.
Gilmore, yeah.
Lyman Gilmore, yeah. So, I'd never played tackle football, but like everybody else, you had like visions of, the 49ers or, the Dallas Cowboys. And I was like, I was looking forward to playing football. So freshman year for me was my first time playing tackle football. And they had this, varsity coach. Of course, I was on the JV, but this varsity coach, Terry Logue, he sort of set the tone top to bottom with, hey, we're going to build this program. And the school had opened a year earlier, and they had a football coach, and he didn't really know football. They went 0-10. And so we had nowhere to go but up, which is kind of a cool thing, because you can build it in your, you can build it in your image. And that's what the coach did, Terry Logue. He, decided we're going to build a program out of this. And he just retired a few months ago, early, 2021, and I think it was either 2 years or 3 years where he did some assistant coaching at Sierra College. He's the coach. He owns every win in school history at Bear River High School.
That's incredible.
And so, and for about 2/3 of that, he had what it was a co-head coach. Mm-hmm. But the way that they keep track of high school victories, at least in California, is somebody's got to get them. Like, you can't have 3 co-head coaches, and every time you win a game, 3 guys get a win.
Right.
So all those wins are his, but he admittingly says, hey, I had a great partner in Scott Savoy, who was my right-hand man. But to kind of bring it full circle to your question about, the early years and starting and new, I knew it was a new school, and I knew it was small just because everything was small where we were, right? I mean, the town only had 10,000 people, or 15 or 20 or whatever it was. And it was just kind of an exciting time, but there was no like feeder program. There was no junior Bruins, and there was none of that stuff. You remember that.
Yeah, it was, yeah, like you said, we came from Magnolia as, guys who, knew how to pull a flag into, putting on helmets and, trying to hit somebody for the first time and, pretending you're, Lyle Alzado or something.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about that too. Like going to high school, I never did not know that I would not be. I didn't think I wouldn't have an opportunity to play. Like,
yeah,
in my mind, I wasn't like, hey, I'm good at this, because I wasn't good. And I was tiny. I was 5'6", 115 pounds and, just a tiny guy. But I loved football and I loved basketball. You and I played on those teams together.
Right.
But I don't know if it was because it was such a small school or because we were out in the middle of the foothills where everything was just kind of small and you just kind of did whatever you wanted. I never thought, like, my kids, we live in a big city. Like if they go to try out for the basketball team or the football team, there are a lot of kids that they got to compete for. Like for us, they're like, great, you have a pulse and a drive to play football, you're on the team, And so for that, I'm grateful, because I don't believe if I would have gone to a big, city school or anything like that, I would have been third or fourth or fifth string. And instead, I got starting time and, made all league in football and, and basketball. Got, probably started about half the year my senior year, but the opportunities were there because it's a small school. And of course, there are a lot smaller schools. That was 600 kids or something at the school at that time. But there are schools, that are charter schools or public schools that are 200, 300, 175 kids, 300, 400 kids. And those kids play like 3 sports, and they're in jazz band and they're in, performance, VAPA stuff. And so,
I remember, and this is a little bit of your father walking uphill both ways in the snow type of stuff. But
you're good at that too.
Yeah, but I tell my kids stories of like my senior year schedule, which consisted of like, an early morning seminary class that started at 5:30, chamber choir, 0-hour stuff. And then during basketball season, if we had away games, we wouldn't get home until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And, it was, just kind of thinking about it now, like those schedules are insane, but I'll tell you what, man, it's such a great experience. And like you, like there'd been no way for me, as athletic as I pretend to be, don't tell my kids, that I could not have, I would not have been able to play at any kind of level, even at like Nevada Union High School, which was kind of the school that we were kind of
1,800, 2,000 kids back then.
2,000 kids. And, I played against all those kids in junior high, but man, that's just a different level. And the cool thing is, when I feel bad because I live in an area, we were talking about this earlier. I live in an area where the school next to me, maybe a half mile away, has probably got 5,000 kids at it. And I think about, in some ways that's good. Like we never had a marching band, for example, but there'd been no way for a guy like me to, like you said, play 2 sports. I was lucky enough to play baseball as well. And like that is an impossibility in the environment that we're in today with these large schools, at least at the major schools that we live close to now.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting that way. And I even thought of that post high school when, trying to pick college. And I remember thinking, like I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, and I had read that, all these sports broadcasters went to Syracuse University, and I go to Syracuse. And somebody told me somewhere along the way, they're like, you wherever you go, just make it your own. Like you can find your way and find the opportunity. So same thing, like when I got to college and I started doing sports play-by-play for the college radio station, what do you think my chances would have been if I would have gone to Syracuse University with 60,000 students or whatever they've got, and versus Chico State with 16,000 students and only a micro community that wanted to do sports. So yeah, there's something to be said about the opportunity, and you're even making me reflect on this of, what opportunity is missed, the access to experience when you're in a situation where the numbers aren't on your side, or, or do you have to be like hyper competitive or hyper focused in order to break into, vocal choir or chamber choir or, band or something like that. Now, on the flip side, like you said, there are opportunities, right? There was no marching band at Bear River, but at your high school and where you live with 5,000 kids, they'll line the field. Same thing here. One of my kids goes to high school, and I think their dance and cheer team, it's like 100 girls, right. They go like 20-yard line to 20-yard line in the football games and all that. And I could probably count on two hands how many cheerleaders we had, for us and in high school basketball.
The Highland High School here, it's got a full orchestra, 3 jazz bands by itself. It just I'm not discounting the larger schools, but I will say specifically when it comes to sports, and there is I think something unique about sports. The feelings for a musician like me, the amount of time that my mind reflects on Coach Logue, on the experiences that I had driving to Galt High School on the team bus or Golden Sierra or something, the games against Colfax, having a winning team that did well and got so close, and all those memories are just priceless in my mind, and I reflect on those more than I think I ever thought I would.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who did not go to our high school together. He was a college friend, and his daughter is in her first or second year up at Western Washington. And I said, we were just reminiscing how our college experience was really great. Small college town, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of it's very similar to the high school experience where it'd be like small, everybody knows everybody. You can, have all this opportunity. And I said, does your daughter is this even like unique or rich to her? And he said, oh yes, it's unique and it's rich for them. We can't see it because we're so mired in our nostalgia for our thing, but kids are having experiences. They may be drastically different. And I will say, when you hear about eras like in anything, industry, musical performance, athletics, anything, they say, oh, it was just a different time back then. There is nothing more obvious in athletics than the passage of time of how things have changed. So let's take something very small like hydration. So let me ask you if you remember, Mike, what was it like if you wanted to get a drink of water at football practice?
Oh, there was only a specific time, and you did not drink unless you were good.
Yeah,
and that was actually part of the punishment. Is if you did not do what you're supposed to, that was what was kept from you.
Right, and hurry up, right? Like,
yeah, that's
quick,
right.
Go get it and get back, and
get back on your knee, back into the drill or whatever was next.
Now let's fast forward to now or whatever, even that was 30 years ago when we were there, but focus on now. What do we know about athletes? We know that a well-hydrated athlete is a better athlete.
Right.
Whereas back then it was held over your head like, hey, be a tough guy. You don't need a water break. You don't need a water break. So I'm not even saying that the retroactive nostalgia that we're feeling about, the greatness of our time and era was smart. There were some elements like that where you go, well, that just doesn't make any sense. But it was,
and it really didn't even at the time. I mean, people knew it was just, it was totally a cultural thing. Like I can't imagine, if a doctor, actually, was sat on a couch and saw what happened at a normal football practice, they go, oh yeah, that's probably good for them.
Yeah, right. That would not be in the prescription. But what was interesting is you'd have this mix of things like that didn't make any sense and all that. And you go, well, I guess that did kind of toughen me up. Right. So I guess that did make me sort of fight through the discomfort of whatever, being parched or whatever I was cramping or, that type of deal. But then there was so much routine and, especially when you think about team sports, it's a microcosm of society. Everybody has their story. So, everybody on those teams that you and I played on had a different circumstance. fractured families, complete families, loving families, dysfunctional families, birth and death, stress and strain, moving in, moving out, good students, bad students, the full range, poor, well-to-do. And there ends up being in those athletic endeavors, just like when, you were in the choirs and, vocal performances and things like that, there are universal truths in all of that. Like, okay, guess what? We're all held to the same expectation that when you're on the sideline, your chin strap is on and your jersey's tucked in. Right. Practice starts at the same time for everybody. Coach Logue had a standard for certain things. We knew what our pregame meal was. It was that.
That's right.
It was that pasta. By the way, you'd get a kick out of this. That's still the case.
Are you
still
serious?
The same. Like the team moms and everything, by the same thing. It's still the salad, the French bread, the pasta, the this, that, and so they have it down to, they just print it off, and it's like, here's what we're doing. This is how we do it at Bear River High School. And so that's
now what I bet they don't do, because this was a great memory of me. It was the breakfast mornings at, what was the place that was that cafe?
Cherry Creek. Yeah,
that
place is long shuttered, but yeah, because we played Saturday high school football games and no lights, and so that there was nothing like the excitement of waking up on that. Do you remember? I mean, of saying like, hey, we're going to meet over at Cherry Creek at 7:30, 8 o'clock. The JV game's going to start at 11. We'll gear up because varsity's going to start at 1. So we'd go in there and we'd get our, breakfast, or, I don't know, when we were playing we're playing basketball, or, I mean, we had these routines, and these coaches that were all in a universal truth of their own, which is they're all brand new to that high school too. So they were really, forging programs, early on, and we were at the genesis of that. And I don't think we really got that. I mean, I didn't get it. I didn't think like, oh, we're starting an era, but like that football program, the first year before Coach Logue got there, they went 0-10. Second year, or the first year that Coach Logue was there, they won 2 games, but they had a player who didn't do the right paperwork, and they had to forfeit 2 games because he was, had to transfer. And then, right after that, now you're 4-6. Year after that, my junior year, you would have, I think, been on the JV team. Our junior year, first winning season in school history, we went 7-3, but only 2 of the 8 teams made the playoffs. And we were like the number 3 team in the league. So we didn't make the playoffs, but we had that first winning season. And they went from, Bear River went from that 1989 season of 7-3 all the way until last year with non-losing records for every year except for one.
Are you serious?
We had one year, I think, I want to say 2015 or something like that, coming off of a section championship year. The team that followed went like 3-7, but yeah, it was like a stretch of 26 straight years or something, 27 straight years of
that's incredible.
Of non-losing season. So the tradition really, the tradition, expectation, it's just like a community. It's just like a church community. It's just like anything else. When you have elders, or you have this or you have that, like this is the way you do it, and it's expected. And, you fall in line, you make your own little mark, you do your thing. Nobody's bigger than the game. I got fond memories too, just like that. And I'm sure it's way rosier than I remember, because I remember some very difficult times too, and you do too. Boy, Mike, I look back, I've got an old VHS tape, and I'm not sure if it's been edited down, if I have the full thing, but I still remember my senior year, your junior year on the football side. And I don't know what they called it, but you won an award that was, I believe, was it practice player of the year or something, the toughest guy of the year, because you were the scout team, everything. You carried the ball every time, you threw your body around. I have never seen a guy take so much punishment and pop back up with a smile on his face and be so resilient. And I remember you were banged up and battered and bruised. And I, to this day, Mike, love looking back at the Wheatland game when you took that little reverse about 40 yards for a touchdown in the first game of the 1990 season. That made my heart feel so good because you just got your butt kicked in practice all the time. And well, hey, I didn't like contact either. I mean, I was a wide receiver. My plan was catch the ball, get to the stick, and fall down. I didn't want to get hit, but I just felt so good for you. That Wheatland game is just such a treat, and I'm sure you remember it.
I do remember that, and I'll tell you, that's actually pretty wild. I remember that game, and I remember coming off of that touchdown. And the first thing I see is big Tom Zerflu coming up and like landing on me.
I think you went down too. I think he probably knocked you down. And
I'm sure he did. He was much larger than I was, and I think he just knocked me to the ground.
Now that I think about it, I think we may have been ahead pretty good in that game. I think we won the game like
it was
31-6 or something like that. And so you got some playing time as a junior. I may have been in at quarterback because I was the number 2 quarterback. I may have actually handed you the ball.
That's possible. And I think the only reason I did get that playing time is one of the Frazier brothers was hurt. And
doesn't every school have that? Like the great twins or the 1 year apart brothers that, are just like the face of the program. And those Frazier brothers were just that.
They were, that's a fun, I appreciate you bringing that up because that is a fond memory.
What was the name of the award? Do you remember?
You know what? I don't remember the exact name of the award, but I think
like it was punching bag award.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. Well, I remember, like my nickname on the team was Rubber Band Man because I kept popping up and that was a fun. You know what? And that's literally like I didn't know any different. I had brothers. I had not older brothers. I'm the oldest, but I had brothers and I had friends that I would always, we'd, be hitting on each other and playing tackle football out on the golf course at the
But Mike, were you like really, really tough, or were you just covering, or were you just hurt? And that's how do you explain? I mean, you were ragdolled around there so much. And I'm not talking about like abused. It was just like you were going against the first team defense and all these guys were bigger than, you and me, and you got pounded.
I just honestly don't think I knew any different. I think I was, pretty resilient from a standpoint of I didn't know how to not get up and keep playing.
Oh, good for you.
So I was just, I can't even take credit from that. That's just, I guess, something God gave me a little bit. So I don't know what to say about that, but it was something that I do take a lot of pride in and did take a lot of pride in at the time is, and maybe that's part of it. It became part of my personal culture of like, okay, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I don't give up. I don't, I'm willing to go into the pile that next time. Because there wasn't much.
You were fearless. I over-indexed on fear, and I think you had a leak in the bottom of the fear boat because you never filled up. You'd stand up. That I thought a couple of times, is he looking out the ear hole? This poor guy is getting, and then we get to basketball and it's like, all right, no contact, but you were, zipping around there like a whirling dervish, all arms and legs and,
that
was away. But
that was a great experience, man.
But look, we would have never had this stuff had we been, we would have been team managers if we would have gone to, Gilbert High School.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And playing in the band or doing something else, but which is, by the way, there's nothing wrong with those types of things. But it's such an interesting, like the difference between and it has nothing to do with it's literally luck. You know what I mean? Like we were bound to go to Nevada Union. We were bound to have the experience, and this takes me back to something you said earlier, which I really appreciate, which is everybody has their own experience, and honestly, everybody, in my opinion, kind of has the right experience. It's weird, but as I've grown older, I've kind of realized that good or bad, like every person's life is kind of a custom tailored for them.
You're where you are and where you're supposed to be, because that is where you are and where you're, that's it.
Yeah.
Be here now, so
it's really credible. And I have to say, like, when I will always, first of all, I have to mention, I remember, you were the master of the bank 3-pointer. I remember that pretty clearly.
Intentionally or otherwise, right? I was also the master of the finger roll.
Yes,
was short and would roll up the rim and into the basket, where I took off from like mid post and later realized I only had a 27-inch vertical, and my finger roll would lay up and go up, roll up the rim, and then fall in. But everybody else elevated and dropped it in.
Oh, well, I think I inherited that finger roll from you, so that's pretty great. That's amazing. And I also have to mention, like, there's probably not a guy on any team that I ever played with that didn't have more fun and enjoy the experience. Like I always felt like you were kind of an old soul and always knew what was important. And I remember one game, a football game, where you were playing quarterback, and this would have been, I think, your senior year, because we were on the same team together, and it was a game that we were blowing out, and so it had some had some guys on that had never caught passes, had never touched the ball. And man, you did everything you could to make sure everybody had that experience of touching the ball, being able to make a catch, even if it took a few downs to make it happen. And you know what, that takes some real, like, understanding of who you are and what you're doing. And that meant a lot to me. I got to tell you that.
Wow. Well, that's nice of you to say. It takes about a second for it to trigger the memory. And I remember one of the situations, right? I remember the kid's name. You remember the kid's name? J.R. Franzoni.
I do remember, yeah.
And this kid was, what do you think? He was 110 pounds, maybe 5'2", tiny little guy. And I think we had called, he was split out on the right side as a receiver. I had gone in at backup quarterback, and we were ahead. So it must have been like Golden Sierra or something like that they were playing, right? And we were ahead pretty good, or maybe it was Galt or something like that. And I remember we tried, you're right, like 1, 2, 3 times to try to get a pass out to him. And ultimately we ended up going pro set 30 out, and JR was split end on the right side. And we were kind of on the short side of the field, so I didn't have to make a kind of a long throw. And that's only a little 3-step down and out type of pass, where you pick up 3, 4, 5 yards, step out of bounds. Well, it's a 3-step drop. And I remember dropping back to pass, and JR, he was like, and I mean this in a loving way, he was like the 6-year-old kid where the helmet is like bigger than the body.
Right. Yep.
And so he lined up, and I can remember his little body like over there lined up, and I'm like, I know the route he's going to run. I did my 3 steps. I turned to throw it, and he hasn't even gotten out of his break yet to get, out to the sideline. I thought, oh my. So I did the quick hitting boom, boom pass didn't happen in like 2 or 3 seconds like it was supposed to. So I had to do a little baby rollout and just kind of like lob a pass out there. And that kid caught it, and he got, smashed on the sideline, and he popped up, and I was so happy for that. Oh, yeah. So happy for that kid. Or we had a lineman, let's see if this name jogs a bell, or rings a bell, Tate Nielsen.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Tate was our guard. I still see him periodically on Facebook, but I haven't talked to him in 30 years. He's a firefighter. And Tate's deal was, he was just kind of an unassuming guy. And, I think he battled a little bit of, he's just, he wasn't like the most popular kid. Nobody had a problem with him, but it wasn't like he was the most gregarious or whatever. And he was a little doughy and, just kind of lumpy little lineman or whatever. And I didn't see that in him. I was like, you know what? You're going to end up being in the Optimus All-Star game. And that's the big, All-Star game in the Sacramento area. And he's like, what? Like, I'm not even all league. I'm not even, and I'm like, you watch. And I remember, I just got chills. The announcement was made, however it was, I think he was the only guy on our team, or I don't know, maybe there was somebody else. And so he and I have this thing between us. And again, I haven't talked to him in 30 years, but we call each other the optimist, because I feel like I'm internally and eternally optimistic and hopeful. And I don't know if I saw something in him or not, but I was just like, why not you? And I've always felt that with like we're talking about opportunities, like, hey, big school, small school, big company, small company, big church, little church, where do I fit in the mix? Like, why not you? Mm-hmm. Like somebody's got to, I remember I wanted to be Al Michaels, so I wanted to be, sports broadcaster and all that. And somebody at some point very early in high school or in college said, you do realize, there's that Al Michaels has the job, like one job. Right. Now, he wasn't doing Monday Night Football back then, but whatever. It was him and Bob Costas. And I was like, that's one job. I'm like, yeah, but somebody has to have that job.
That's why not great
me?
Attitude.
And why not me? I don't know,
And like you said, by the way, at the very beginning, in the little community that we lived in, because of the culture that it was, like, it did feel like, and I think it still does. Like I don't want to say there's something extremely special, although I feel that nostalgia. But there's something about that, like, freedom to just, like, you can do anything you want. Like you have the world is your oyster. And you're unbounded opportunities. And that's no matter what my kids do, that's the kind of thing that I hope that I can instill in them, is that just utter optimism in their future, and what the possibilities are. And then everything else kind of works itself out as you've experienced.
Well, I'm only just now thinking of this because of what you just said. I wonder how much, because it was, it wasn't like a young staff. There were seasoned teachers and seasoned coaches at our high school, right? The Barbara Saxes and the Dick Warrants and the Mary Underwoods and Mike Browns and all of that, Mike Blake. Yep. So seasoned teachers and all. But they were something new, and there was a hopefulness and an optimism and all of that in every one of the experiences that we had with it. So it makes me wonder if that was sort of, I don't know, channeled subliminally through to us. Like, why not?
I think that's wild. Like, there were no ghosts of the past that they're chasing at Bear River. There's no such thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
We were setting the records because there were no records to.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
And I wonder. And by the way, so you've kind of kept close. And maybe we'll finish a little bit on this. You've kept close with the school. Tell me about the state of things now that the wonderful Terry Logue is no longer there. And is enjoying his retirement. What are the outlooks? Tell us a little bit about Bear River, the state of Bear River football today.
Yeah, so it is a very interesting time, because it's what's the program going to be like whatever, Bear River football. What's the school going to be like? There, it's not like you've had, a coach every 3 or 4 years. You've had the same guy there for however long. So me personally, for example, when I went off to college and went into my profession and all that, I did not live in the area and was not connected. And we didn't, the internet was very early. And I don't even know if the local newspaper had articles online. I think I just fell out of touch with the program, but would go back for things like the alumni basketball game. Every Thanksgiving Eve, we'd play the alumni basketball game, which was always fun and all of that. And then when I moved back to Northern California in 2008, I got reunited with the program, because I'd always been, just very grateful for the experience and all of that. And I went to a game, a Bear River game, and it was on a Saturday. They were playing it down at Del Oro High School against a team from Nevada. It was one of these kind of jamboree type type game scenarios. And I saw Coach Logue, and hey, haven't seen you in, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it was. And he said, hey, I got to tell you something, Brian. I said, what? And he goes, I got Parkinson's. And I went, oh, and I don't even think I knew what Parkinson's was and all that. But I'm like, I don't think that's the good thing. Lou Gehrig's, Parkinson's, AL, all of that stuff. There's nothing ends well with any of that. And the second he told me that, I don't know what I said. Somebody's got to put his story down. Somebody's got to chronicle this guy's commitment to the community, to the school, to the kids and all that. And what? He's exchanging his entire life at a sacrificial level for the fates of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids for a $2,500 a year stipend to coach, football every year for, 45 years or whatever he was across all of his, coaching time. And I had just gotten into working in corporate video, was, making videos and little short documentaries and all that. And I said, I want to make a documentary about, Coach Logue and how he's unique and not unique. There are probably lots of Coach Logues, legacy coaches, people who do certain things a certain way, old school, having to adapt across generations, how do you coach kids that have all kinds of distractions and video games and cell phones and better things that they could be doing rather than doing, double days of, high school football and all that. And so I started filming, interviewing, game stuff, locker room, that kind of thing. And I'm in editing mode. Still have a few interviews left to do, but I'm putting together a long form documentary about Coach Logue.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's going to be called Be Somebody. The Coach Coach Logue story. Be Somebody was one of the things he'd holler out.
Absolutely, that's perfect.
Be Somebody, which I think speaks to potential. If I turn to you or your kids, I go, hey, Mike, do you know what your potential is? And you go, yeah, I go, well, I don't know what your potential is. So how do you know what your potential is? And the truth is, none of us know what our potential is. And that's where growth and opportunity and learning and optimism comes in. So anyway, I've been working on this, and much to his chagrin, he would have loved this documentary to be out so he could see it. But I'm like, every year you keep coaching and not retiring, I've got a new chapter to the film. And he had gone 20 years without a Sac Joaquin section title. And then the first or second year I was doing the filming, the kids at the school had a real good JV coach that they liked. And he was nice. And he was, I think he was involved in a lot of their church groups, and he was a good coach and all that. And a lot of the kids, or at least the kids' parents, saw, and now what? We're going to go from JV to hand him off to this old guy, Logue, and his, crusty ways and all of that kind of thing. We want him out. We want the JV guy to be the coach. And there was a bunch of community pressure to out him, to boot Coach Logue and Coach Savoy, and just, hey, the time has come to, try something new. And the other guy was beloved, and for good reason. He was really a great coach, and he had been there 6 or 7 years as the JV coach. And remember at the time, they just say, we don't hire or fire people based on, this is high school. We're not hiring or firing based on your records or not, or this, that, and the other. You got to be good to the kids. You got to develop this. And I think that really hurt Coach Logue when, there was a contingent that was trying to, to push him out. And, and there were some that were like, hey, the experience he's going to create for our kids is not going to be what we wanted. And then others said, we can't win with him because all he does is run the football. And look, the rest of these offenses are spread offenses and fun. Even the JV coach.
I have to say, that is so funny because our team was the spread offense team. My senior year, with
Ramon Barrios,
and, Matt Reg, some of those guys, I remember we ran the ball, but man, we threw the ball a whole lot more.
That's very well. And hey, my senior year, our quarterback, Rich Gauntlet
was great.
He still has the single game passing record at Bear River, 373 yards, in a single game.
I didn't know that.
That's a record that still stands.
Who was that against? Do you remember?
That was against, I think it was against Center. in a game that we actually lost. And then Tanner Mathias, class of, I think, 2008 or 2009, came within 2 yards of it. And he was a great quarterback, about 6'4", 220, 230, went on to Sierra College, played some semi-pro stuff. And he is the new head football coach at Bear River. And they're doing a co-head coaching thing. So Tanner Mathias, a Bear River alum, is the new co-head coach. The other co-head coach is a gentleman who was the JV coach this past couple of years. Real nice guy, and I think they're going to be a nice two-headed monster. But it was interesting to jump back to Coach Logue. They're trying to push out the old guy and all this, and they're like, this guy is Bear River football. Like, right. You don't know how good you get. This guy is up at all elements of the night putting together. We'd get paper scouting reports that were hand-drawn, photocopied, plays noted. Coach, he'd meet at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning on Sundays to draw things up. He had a cup of coffee with the LA Rams and when he was done with college and didn't quite make it, and he tried to get on with the Broncos. I think maybe with the Broncos tried to get a sniff there, but he didn't. But it was mostly this tryout with the Rams where he'd kind of matriculated along. So he knew football and he knew sports and he knew baseball too. You played baseball. He was the baseball coach, and baseball was like his first love.
Right. I remember throwing many softball pitches to him to practice,
just so he could jack one. And
he was getting ready for a city league game, I'm sure.
Well, and that's different time as well. Football, he used to dress down Colfax week full gear and let us hit him, and vice versa. So anyway, that 2013-14 year where there was the dust up with the community, it went all the way to the school board, and people were arguing he should go and not go. And by that point, he had retired from teaching. So he wasn't teaching at the school. He was just, coaching football. And they said, no, we're not getting rid of him. And that next year they won the section title. And they went on to play in the section title game 4 out of 5 years. They won 2 out of the 4 games they played, all with old school Coach Logue running Fire 31, 36 power, Fire 28. And they changed things up too. They went short shotgun and ran some of the same plays out of that kind of a formation. But it's the everlasting elements, and I'm grateful for him, and I tell him all the time, the everlasting elements still are true. He says, the kids are different. Are they not as tough? Are they not as committed? Are they not as this or not as that? And he goes, man, all those things may or may not be true to a player, right? Because there are some that is still like, wow, this kid's tough or smart or loves football or is not distracted by everything else that happens as a high schooler. But Terry's commitment to the kids to teach them, values and commitment and dedication and attention to detail and all of that still rang true all the way until he just retired. And this, even though the Parkinson's, has limited him in so many ways. He's got to he had to take the golf cart everywhere, even on the road, to get him from locker room to field. Last couple of years, he's had a cane on the sideline and a little stool in case he needed to sit down, as the game was going on. But he was still coaching him up, and such great respect for him. And I learned a lot from him. I think, Mike, I even learned a lot from him. And this is kind of just the kind of person I am too, but I learned a lot from him in the things I didn't like about him.
Yeah.
So I went like, I can respect that and I like that. And other things I'd be like, I want to be the exact opposite of that. And what the beauty of like reuniting with him years ago when we, started working on this documentary, is I had a chance to tell him that stuff. This kind of thing really hurt me back then, and I didn't understand why. And this thing really inspired me, as a young man, growing up and looking for kind of a father figure. And so I'm grateful for him on all fronts in that way. And so I'm looking forward. Hopefully this is the year where I can get the documentary wrapped up, and I think we're going to try to do a nice little screening or fundraiser or something along the lines for that. At least that's my hope.
I gotta finish up by saying one last thing, because you asked me a question about, why did I do the things that I did on the, practice field or whatever. And one thing I have to say, and I do attribute this to Coach Logue, is, that's one guy I didn't want to disappoint. Like, I had so much respect for that guy that I did not want to be,
Totally.
for any reason, I don't want to say the weak link, because I never felt like that, but I never wanted to disappoint, or I wanted to make sure I did everything I could to make the team better. And it was about, pleasing him, making sure that he knew that the team was ready for the next game, and that I could be a big part of that. And that, that says a lot about him as a man.
Absolutely. And everybody has value. And everybody has a role on the team, and just, do your job. So, for example, in practice, like you say, no, I don't want to let somebody down or whatever. I always say, you know what? I know what my limitations are, in something physically. Like, I'm not the fastest guy, right? But I'm sure as heck not going to be the last guy. Right. So when we were doing, and it's likely is not politically correct, but it was called the Indian run, right? Remember that? We'd blow the whistle, and the guys at the back of the line had to sprint to the front, and then it just, circles around the field. Yep. I was like, my pack of three that's at the tail end of this line, when that whistle blows, I may not end up being the fastest guy to the front of the snake, right? But I'm not going to be the last guy. And so I changed numbers my senior year to be from, I was 84 up until that point. I changed my number to number 2, because I'm like, I'm fine being a number 2. That's I don't have to be the top dog. I don't have to be number 1. I don't have to be the best at everything. And that applies in everything. I mean, whatever, Google or Facebook, there are lots of number 2s in that company that make a good living, or, a number 2 or you don't have to be the Pope in order to make a difference at your church. You don't have to be the CEO in order to have an impact at the company. And I've taken that professionally too, in my profession. It's like, there are times where I assert myself where they go, oh, usually only directors or vice presidents will weigh in on that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I have a voice and an opinion and a perspective, whether, it's, acted upon or not, doesn't mean I can't, share it. And so I think I learned that too from Bear River, that there was you can be anything you want, but it's also pretty hard to be good at something if you don't know what you yourself are good at. So I was like, okay, I know I'm good at effort. I'm down on skill. I'm not very tough, but I'm smart, so you play to your strengths. And anyway, yeah.
No, that's huge. And by the way, and I want to thank you for your time. We're running short time. And our former athletic director, basketball coach Jack McCrory.
He was when the school opened, he was the athletic director, the basketball coach, track coach, and was there for forever, and then relinquished the basketball duties for a while, and then was still coaching track and substitute teaching. And then he came back and coached like the freshman girls basketball team. And then he was, helping out when there was a transition at the athletic director. And he is I just love that guy. I'm not particularly close to him. It's like we're calling each other all the time, but like 10 years ago when my kids had said, Dad, you've never taken us fishing. I'm like, well, let's call Captain Jack. And sure enough, he took us out on his boat and taught my girls how to fish. And, just a treasure of a man.
Yeah. Well, he is, and there's a lot of great memories, and as we get older, things change, and that's as it should, it really is. And
this end of an era stuff is tough for guys like us that are pretty sentimental and nostalgia and all that. And there's some legacy things in there, right? So the gymnasium, the nice gym and all that stuff at Bear River is Jack McCrory Gymnasium. And there's a line that's going to be in the documentary where Coach Logue on the football side, I had asked him, like, what's your legacy at the school? And I was waiting for the big answer of, I'm the Woody Hayes, or I'm the Al Davis. I'm the figurehead of this thing. He goes, I'll probably get I think they joked about, I'll probably get the Terry Logue, like, gear shed or something like that, like where they keep all the bags and the tackling.
I know that gear shit.
You know,
That's
and
amazing.
I'm like, yeah, we'll see. You know, the stadium is named, the field is not. I don't know if there's any plans to do something in particular or not, but you know, weights was a big thing.
Oh yeah.
You know, the program never, you know, early on when we played, you mentioned Galt High School earlier. We played Galt High School when you were, I think you would have been a sophomore. I was a junior, and they had that Hatzenbuehler kid, and his dad, Irv Hatzenbuehler, was the coach. And Hatzenbuehler was a big kid, like 6'2", 230, running back, linebacker, went on to Stanford, all of that. And they were just tougher than us. And that was the game that Coach Logue describes, that, you know, it was a reset for him. He's like, we have to get stronger. And they built a weight program, and, you know, we started lifting and doing all that. I mean, you and I were still string beans and all that, but our kids don't have to know that. But you know,
I wish I was still a string bean.
That's right. Those are pivot points.
Yeah.
You know, those are pivot points where it's like, hey, what got us here is not going to get us there. So you got to, you know, adapt. And I mean, when this documentary comes out, there are moments like that where he talks about, like, hey, it's halftime, we're down, but let's get out there and see what we do on the first drive and do something, and then let's see how they react. Like, he's fine with letting it play out. He's not going to show up unprepared. He always thinks he's underprepared, but he's always way prepared and smart about it. But that's what I mean about, there are just 1,000 lessons in all of these moves, and that's you know, and in equal amount perhaps of things that you would never do the way that he did them, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it's all good. And these characters in our lives are great. You know, they are part of our souls, you know, moving forward. They're ingrained in our brains.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, Brian, thank you for the time. This has been a great, you know, jaunt down memory lane, as well as kind of talking about some, you know, kind of bigger issues. But I want to thank you for your time. This has been a lot of fun for me. And we'll have to if you don't mind, we'll have to have you on again when the documentary comes out. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm always willing to bore people a second time.
Right on. Well, it wasn't boring for me, and that's all that matters in this gig.
That's right. Well, thanks for nice Brian. Chatting with you, and I'm so happy to hear that, you know, life's on track, and ups and downs have hit us all, but internal and eternal positivity is there. But as they say, there's he's kind of a salty guy on social media, but all on the very positive front. But there's Gary V. I love this line. He's like, well, anyway, he just says positivity is undefeated. And you go, well, what if something goes bad? Like, he's like, I'm not saying it controls everything, but like, if you stay positive, if you're looking for the good and the gratitude and all of that, then things will play out, you know, they will play out. So, well, great to catch up with you. Thanks for having me on your program. And I was glad to actually hear from you, because now I'm exposed to your program, so I can listen to your other episodes with much more interesting people.
Well, I hope you enjoy them. And this has been great for me. And I hope, I look forward to the further communication, Brian. It's been a blast.
That sounds great. Well, take care of yourself, Mike.
You too. This has been Brian Hudson. My name is Mike Levitt, and you've been listening to And If Love Remains.